My wife had an affair with my best friend and convinced me to remortgage our house for $250, $0 to fund their secret life. Now she's suing me for half the property and claiming I drained our joint account of $100, $0. I still can't believe I trusted her. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing all this out like some kind of cautionary tale. But I guess life has a way of throwing curveballs that you just can't dodge, no matter how careful you are. It all started with little signs, things I brushed off at first, thinking maybe I was just overthinking. But looking back, they were the breadcrumbs leading to a pretty fucked up truth I couldn't ignore anymore. My wife, Lisa, had always been a bit of a bitch. She's the kind of girl who can be charming when she wants something, but quick to turn cold when she doesn't get her way. We've been married for about 6 years now, and honestly, I thought we had a good thing going, until I started noticing the little things. She'd stay out later than usual, sometimes claiming she was working late, but then I'd see her phone light up with texts from some guy I didn't know. She'd delete her messages fast, like she was trying to hide something, and that only made me more suspicious. But I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe she was just stressed at work, or maybe I was overreacting. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then one day, I found her phone unlocked on the kitchen table. I wasn't snooping, I swear. I was just grabbing a glass of water when I saw a string of messages between her and this guy named. They were talking about meeting up, and she was telling him she couldn't wait to see him again. The way she described their plans like it was nothing special made my stomach drop. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't even know how to process it at first. My mind kept circling around, trying to find some reason why she'd do this. Was I not enough? Had I missed some signs? But deep down I knew the truth. She was cheating on me. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted with everything, was sneaking around behind my back with my best friend, Mike. The worst part, I didn't confront her immediately. I just sat there staring at her phone, feeling like my entire world was crumbling. I started noticing more things, small, sneaky changes in her behavior. She'd hide her phone more often, get defensive when I asked questions, and her mood swings became more intense. It was like she was trying to keep a lid on the secret, but I could see right through her. One night, I decided to follow her. She said she was going out with her girlfriends, but I had a gut feeling. I waited until she left, then followed her to this dingy apartment she'd never mentioned before. I saw her go inside with. They weren't just talking, they were clearly doing more than just kissing. They looked completely into each other, and I swear my blood ran cold. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so naive. That moment, seeing her with him, changed everything. It was like being punched again, but this time I was wide awake. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I had to confront her, face the truth head on. That's when I decided I'd had enough. I wasn't going to let her keep lying to me, not anymore. I needed to know the full story, and I needed to figure out what to do about it. The confrontation came a few days later. I knew I couldn't keep pretending I didn't see what I saw, so I sat her down in the living room, trying to keep my voice steady, but inside I was boiling. She looked at me with that fake innocent look she always threw on when she was trying to manipulate someone, and I could see the guilt flickering behind her eyes. Lisa, I started, trying to keep my tone calm but firm. I know everything. I saw you with, don't even bother denying it. I followed you. I know what you've been doing. Her face changed instantly. She sat back, crossed her arms, and scoffed. Oh, so now you're spying on me. That's just great. You're overreacting as usual. I clenched my fists. Overreacting? You're cheating on me, Lisa, with my best friend. How the hell do you think I should feel about that? She rolled her eyes, a sneer on her face. Look, it's not what you think. And it's complicated. You don't understand, okay? You're so busy with work you don't see what's really going on. I was lonely and he's been there for me. It doesn't mean I don't love you. That was a lie. I knew it was. I could see right through her bullshit. She always had a way of spinning stories, making herself the victim. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I'd seen enough and I wanted the truth. That's when she started crying, fake tears streaming down her face, and she claimed she'd made a mistake, that she was sorry, and that she'd end things with immediately. But here's the thing. She also started twisting everything around. She said I was paranoid, that I was controlling, that I'd always been suspicious of her for no reason. She told me I was just jealous, that was just a friend, and that I was overreacting because I didn't want to face the reality that our marriage was falling apart. She even accused me of draining our joint account, claiming I stole money to fund some secret affair of my own. That hit me hard. I had no idea where she was getting that from, but I knew her well enough to realize she was just throwing everything she could think of into the mix to deflect. She claimed I'd drained over 100 grand from our account, but I knew I hadn't touched a penny. I hadn't even known she was plotting some kind of scheme. I was furious but also heartbroken. How did it get to this point? Was I really so blind? I felt like I'd been played, used as a pawn in her game of lies. I told her I'd had enough and that I needed some time to think. That night, I stayed up staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. The betrayal, the lies, the way she looked at like he was her salvation. I felt betrayed, angry, and honestly, completely lost. The next morning, I started digging into our finances. I wanted to know if she really had drained our account or if she was just trying to manipulate me into feeling guilty. Turns out she transferred a large sum, about $100, $0, to some offshore account claiming she'd invested it. But I knew enough about her to realize she'd just been stashing it away, probably to fund her affair or some new life she was planning behind my back. That was the moment I decided I'd had enough. I couldn't trust her anymore. Not as my wife, not as the person I thought I knew. I started talking to a lawyer, figuring out what my options were. I knew I'd have to fight her in court, especially since she was planning to sue me for half the house and claiming I drained the joint account. I felt like I was in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Honestly, I was torn between wanting to confront her again and just walking away. But deep inside, I knew I needed to do something drastic to reclaim my life. I'd trusted her blindly for years, and she'd crushed that trust with her lies, her betrayal, and her greed. I didn't know what the future held anymore, but I knew I wasn't going to let her ruin me completely. I had to stand my ground, no matter how much it hurt. After I gathered all the evidence, the offshore transfer, the texts, the photos I secretly took, I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let her keep pulling the wool over my eyes. My mind was racing, trying to figure out how to navigate this mess without losing everything I had left. I was angry, hurt, and feeling more betrayed than I ever thought possible. The day I decided to confront her again, I called her into the living room. She looked smug, like she thought she was winning, but I didn't care. I laid everything out on the table, the texts, the bank statements, the offshore account details. Her face twisted into a sneer and she started lying again, spinning some ridiculous story about how I'd misunderstood everything and that I was just jealous. That I'd been snooping because I was insecure. I cut her off. "Lisa, you're full of shit. You've been cheating on me with and you've been stealing from us. That's why I've been digging. I want a divorce and I want everything sorted legally. I don't trust you anymore. I don't want to be married to someone who lies and cheats and steals." She flipped her shit then, started yelling, calling me paranoid, accusing me of spying on her because I was insecure. She called me controlling and said I was just trying to ruin her life, but I wasn't having it. I was done with her bullshit. I told her she was a liar, a cheat, and a thief, and I was done playing her game. That's when she started throwing dirt. She claimed I'd drained the joint account myself, that I'd been secretly spending money on some kind of gambling or other women. She said I'd been planning to leave her, that I was trying to hide my own secrets. She even accused me of having an affair myself, which was laughable. I knew I hadn't done any of that. I was just tired of her lies, tired of feeling like I was going crazy. But what really hit me was when she said she was going to sue me for half the house. She claimed I'd forced her into remortgaging our place for $250, $0, money she said I'd pressured her into taking out because I wanted to fund my own secret life. She told me she'd been planning to leave me, take her half and start fresh somewhere else. I couldn't believe how far she was willing to go, how much she was willing to lie to save herself. I knew I had to act fast. I contacted a lawyer first thing that morning. My head was spinning, but I knew I had to protect myself. I told the lawyer everything. handed over the evidence, and started preparing for the fight ahead. I also called my bank and froze the offshore account. I couldn't let her drain any more money or hide anything else. That night I sat alone in the dark, staring at the wall, feeling hollow. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd trusted with everything, she was gone. All that was left was this cold, hard truth. She'd betrayed me in the worst way possible, and now I was in a war I didn't want to fight but knew I had to. I kept asking myself how I didn't see it coming, how I let her manipulate me so easily. I felt like such a fool. But at the same time, I knew I had to stand firm. I couldn't let her destroy everything we built. I had to fight for what was rightfully mine, for my dignity and for the truth. I'd been betrayed, yes, but I wasn't going down without a fight. I had to protect what was left of my life, even if it meant burning everything to the ground first. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I spent every waking hour dealing with lawyers, trying to piece together the legal mess Lisa had thrown me into. She was relentless, filing her own claims, trying to assert that I'd drained the joint account, that I'd manipulated her into remortgaging the house, and that I'd been secretly planning to leave her for someone else. It was like she was trying to rewrite history, to paint herself as the victim while I was the villain. Her accusations about the money were especially infuriating. She insisted I'd taken tens of thousands of dollars from the joint account, claiming I'd been gambling or hiding money for some secret life. But I had bank statements to prove otherwise. I hadn't touched that account beyond normal expenses, and I had no idea where she was getting her figures from. Still, she kept pushing her narrative, spinning her web of lies so thick I wondered if she even believed her own bullshit. Meanwhile, she kept up the act, playing the victim, crying on command, trying to sway anyone who would listen. She told friends and family I was controlling and paranoid, that I'd been abusive and manipulative. I knew her game, though. She was trying to turn everyone against me so she could walk away with half the house, her offshore stash, and whatever else she could grab. I also learned that she'd been secretly planning her escape for months. The offshore account, the secret apartment, the texts. She'd kept so many lies buried, and I'd been too blind to see it. She even had a lawyer on standby, ready to fight me in court. It was like she'd been preparing for this moment her whole life. One of the most shocking things was discovering that she had convinced herself she was the victim all along. She'd spun stories about how I'd been controlling and how she'd only cheated because she was lonely and miserable. She claimed I had drained her emotionally and financially, that I'd made her life hell. Honestly, it made me sick to think she could lie so convincingly, even to herself. But I wasn't going to let her win. I fought back hard, gathering every piece of evidence I could find. I hired a private investigator to look into her offshore accounts and her activities. I wanted to know what she'd hidden, what she'd planned. Turns out she'd been funneling money into that offshore account for months, probably to fund her new life or whatever she was planning with. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. She'd been lying to me, cheating on me, stealing from me, all while pretending to be the perfect wife. I also found out she was suing me for half the house, claiming I'd forced her into remortgaging it. That was the last straw. I had all the documents. She'd signed the papers willingly, not under duress. I showed my lawyer and he told me I had a strong case to fight her claim. But I knew it wouldn't be easy. She had her own team of lawyers and she was good at playing dirty. Throughout all this, I felt of emotions. Deep down, I was devastated. I'd loved her once, believed in us, and now I was just trying to hold on to what little I had left of my dignity. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry, so angry I'd sometimes wake up in the middle of the night, clenched fists, wondering how I'd let this happen, how I'd trusted her with my life, only to find out she'd been lying to my face for months. But I also knew I had to keep my head. I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. I started documenting everything, every conversation, every financial transaction, every lie she told. I knew that when this all went to court, I'd need to be prepared. I wasn't going to just roll over and let her take everything without a fight. I'd do whatever it took to get justice, to prove she was the one who betrayed us both. In the end, I realized that I was more than just a victim of her lies. I was a survivor, and I was done playing the fool. I was going to stand tall, fight for what was mine, and walk away from this nightmare stronger than I ever thought I could be. The court dates kept piling up, and each one felt like a punch in the gut. Lisa was relentless, bringing every dirty trick she could think of to try and sway the judge. She played the victim, crying fake tears, claiming I manipulated her into remortgaging the house, that I drained our savings and left her with nothing. Meanwhile, I was trying to stay focused, presenting the mountain of evidence I had collected: bank statements, text messages, the offshore account details, even recordings of her lies. One of the worst moments was when she brought her own lawyer to claim I'd been abusing her emotionally, trying to paint me as some controlling husband who kept her trapped. It was so far from the truth I almost laughed. I knew her game. She was trying to make herself look innocent, to gain sympathy and turn the court against me. But I stayed calm, sticking to the facts, knowing that I had the truth on my side. The most shocking revelation came during one of the hearings. The judge asked about the remortgage and I produced the signed documents. Lisa's face went pale. She tried to claim she was pressured, that she didn't understand what she was signing. But I had witnesses, my lawyer and a notary public, who confirmed she signed the papers willingly. That's when I saw her real face, rage mixed with panic. She knew she was losing her grip. Throughout all this, I felt a mixture of relief and anger. Relief because I could finally fight back, and anger because I'd been so blind to her lies for so long. I'd trusted her, given her everything, and she'd repaid me with betrayal. The worst part was knowing she'd been planning this for months, maybe even years, secretly stacking her chips while I was oblivious. And then came the twist I didn't see coming. Just days before the final hearing, Lisa filed for bankruptcy, claiming she was unable to pay her debts, mainly because she'd hidden a lot of money offshore and she didn't want to lose her assets. It was her way of avoiding accountability, but it backfired spectacularly. My lawyer uncovered her offshore accounts, and the judge ordered her to produce full financial disclosures. Turns out, she'd been lying about her income, her assets, everything. In a way, it was satisfying. I'd exposed her lies for what they were: desperate attempts to cling to whatever she could. I also found out she'd been planning to leave the country, to start fresh somewhere abroad, with the money she'd hidden. She thought she could run away from her problems, but the court was closing in fast. In the end, I got what I wanted: full custody of the house, a significant settlement, and the knowledge that I'd fought for my dignity. Lisa was ordered to pay back the money she stole, and her claims to half the property were dismissed. She was furious, of course, but I didn't care. I felt exhausted but victorious. I'd survived her betrayal and come out the other side. Looking back now, I realize how much I learned from all this. Trust is fragile. It takes years to build but can be shattered in a moment. Never ignore the small signs and always keep your eyes open. Because when someone is willing to lie, cheat, and steal from you, it's better to find out early than to let it destroy everything. I still feel the sting of her betrayal, but I also feel stronger, more aware of what true loyalty and honesty look like. And I know I'll never let anyone get that close again without knowing exactly who they are. Now that everything's settled, I spend a lot of time reflecting on what happened. Honestly, I don't think I'll ever fully get over the betrayal, but I've learned a few things I want to hold on to. First, never ignore the small signs. I was so caught up in trying to keep the peace, in believing that Lisa was just stressed or busy, that I missed the red flags until it was almost too late. Trust is critical, but it's also fragile. You have to protect it, even when it's hard. Second, I realized how important it is to keep your finances in check. I always thought I could trust her with money because she handled the household expenses. Turns out that trust was misplaced. I should have been more proactive, more involved. Money is a powerful tool. Used for good, it can build a life. Used for deception, it can destroy everything. I learned to be more vigilant about my financial health and to question things that seem off, no matter how uncomfortable it makes me. Third, I learned that sometimes the biggest act of self-preservation is walking away. I could have fought her forever, but I knew that wouldn't bring peace or happiness. Sometimes, the only way to reclaim your life is to cut your losses and start over. That's what I did. I filed for divorce, moved out of the house and began rebuilding my life from scratch. It's not easy, and I still have days where I feel broken, but I remind myself that I'm stronger than her lies. And finally, I've come to understand that honesty and loyalty matter more than anything. Lisa was my wife, my partner, someone I trusted implicitly. Her betrayal was a brutal lesson in how easily that trust can be shattered. Now, I value honesty above all else. I also know that I have to be cautious. People can hide their true selves behind a mask, and sometimes it takes a long time to see who they really are. Looking back, I wish I could go back and do things differently, but I also know I wouldn't be who I am today without this experience. It's made me more cautious, more aware, and a lot more resilient. I'm not bitter, just cautious. I've learned that sometimes love isn't enough to keep a relationship afloat. It takes honesty, respect, and trust, and if those things are broken, it's better to walk away than to stay and suffer. So, to anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, I'll say this: trust your instincts. Don't ignore the small red flags. Protect your heart and your money. And most importantly, don't be afraid to walk away if someone betrays you. Because in the end, your happiness and integrity are what matter most. And no amount of betrayal is worth sacrificing your peace.